I want to talk about romantic relationships, and I think it's very important to talk about romantic relationships and analyze romantic relationships and understand the causes of romantic relationships, because romantic relationships influence, especially the straight model of romantic relationships influence certain ethics within romantic relationships, and even maybe outside romantic relationships. Romantic relationships are perceived in our society as the bedrock, as the foundation on where child raising occurs. Okay, it is seen as for most people the sole source of foundation, or the initial foundation of child raising. So, child raising newborns up to 5 years old, that the attribute of that is often a romantic relationship, a strong romantic relationship. And that's how you get into marriage, where the ethics of marriage, that we have children out of wedlock. This is, for example, the African American community. The moral axiom is that if the woman and the man were loving each other, then this children out of wedlock would not happen, and that then black males would behave better. So romantic love has to be analyzed. Okay, because many of our moral issues, or many of our social issues, are related to, or perceived to be related to, romantic love. Okay. So the first thing, it's amazing that in the philosophy class no one talks about what is romantic love. What is the meaning of sharing your life with somebody? It's almost like, oh, well, we know what that means. We all know what it means. We don't need to explain it. Like, it's so self-obvious. Well, if it's so self-obvious, then why do we have critiques? We have social commentary that people are not in love, and they shouldn't really be married, and they're marrying people for the wrong reasons, and they're doing it the wrong way. Well, if that was so obvious, then I should never hear these critiques. Okay, so clearly it's not that obvious. Okay. So it's amazing to me that philosophy does not even try to explore this. I should make this video for Suicide for Celluloid, because I think he's into philosophy. Philosophy is a way of explaining things. That from my perspective, that's just a very broad, my broad understanding of philosophy. Explaining how things are, maybe how things are and how things should be. That's just my, again, generic understanding. How can romance not be talked about in philosophical terms? Okay, or not be explained? Spending your life, for example, again, spending your life with somebody, sharing your life with somebody. I want to share my life with you. What does that mean? Now, people say, well, I know what it means in my heart, so I don't need to explain it. Well, the problem is, if romantic relationships, put it to you this way, if romantic relationships were going as how we want them to go, and there were no problems, and there was no 50% divorce rate, and there was no out of wedlock children, and there was not a question of whether a married loving couple is the solution towards it's a prominent social issue, black males, the social problems of black males, and I'm sure the Hispanic males, then yes, then it would be irrelevant. But since it is, then it's irrelevant. I think that is totally relevant. What does it mean to share your life with somebody? How is it different? the question of sexuality comes up. You know, I've always asked this question: is sexuality not necessarily intercourse, but sexual feelings, lustful feelings, is the end result, which is induced by romantic love? Is it necessary? Is it a contingent property in order for that relationship to be romantic rather than platonic? I'm not necessarily talking about intercourse. I'm not necessarily talking about sexual acts. I'm talking about lustful feelings. Are they necessary in a romantic relationship? I say no. Because the logic goes this way. If lustful feelings and emotional commitment, when I'm talking about romantic relationship, I'm talking about emotional commitment as a contingent element. If that is not necessary, then in reverse, it's not necessary. I don't see how logically you can sit there and say, well, someone can have a sexual experience without having a romantic relationship with a person or ever romantic commitment toward another person, but they must have, if they're going to be in love, they must have lustful feelings for one another in order for it to be at least at the highest quality of romance, or the optimal quality of romance. Okay. I don't see that. They have to be mutually exclusive in both directions. Okay. They can't be mutually exclusive when it comes to lust or sexual feelings, but not mutually exclusive when it comes to love. So, in other words, yes, you can love somebody that you don't have sexual feelings for, and you can have sexual feelings for somebody that you don't love. And that I think it's asymmetrical. I think it's a no-brainer. Now, people may want, or may have some stronger association, and everybody has a different background, to want the sexual feelings and romance to be fully integrated, but they don't have to be. Okay, so that's one question. The second question is, what is loyalty? Okay, what is loyalty? What is it? What is it to be faithful? Okay. Okay. The third question is, and it would clearly eradicate heterosexism if these questions are answered. Why, or this is how I would propose it. For those who believe that the heterosexual relationship is superior to a homosexual relationship, what in a heterosexual relationship is superior to a homosexual relationship? Now, an Orthodox Catholic would obviously tell you, well, we can procreate. Michael Boris would tell you, just based on that ground, we can procreate, you cannot. Okay. I think that's very shallow, but his argument is plausible in a logical fashion. If it's almost like if you continue to make the presupposition that a kid or somebody, a child brought into this world should be brought into this world by a romantic, loving partnership, which is committed to life. Okay. Well, someone can logically deduct that the ontology of male-female relationships in order to produce a kid means that nature wanted heterosexuals to be that romantic relationship. Okay. Now, again, this to say that they're that heterosexual couples are superior because they can raise children, even if we grant you that, Michael Boris, that does not prove that your relationship's superior. That's ridiculous. Because what about the other? What about the heterosexual couples who cannot reproduce? Are they inferior? Of course not. And we're trying to play devil's advocate here. Okay, it's important that you know these things are discussed or these things are explained. I believe. Um, I mean, some people think it's a no-brainer. Like, you know, they see all around that romantic love relationships produce um, pretty much, for the general part, healthy offspring mentally. Okay, so therefore they believe that that's the route. And I mean, I have discussed the alternative or possible alternative possibility um, that could arise, but it's very unlikely or very rare because of it's so predominant that it's automatic that people think that romantic love, um, offspring. People think that the purpose of romantic relationships is, we'll say, the ontology, the purpose of romantic relationships is fundamentally to reproduce. I think that's just a consequence. I think that's not really the purpose. There's no really purpose per se, because if that was the purpose, then if you say that the purpose of romantic relationships is to reproduce, then you're engaging in heterosexist talk, because there's only one orientation that can reproduce, and that is the heterosexual orientation. I think that gays and lesbians and people who cannot reproduce clearly show that childbirth is a consequence. So we'll just flame flash by. It's shit. I can't. Notice that this bell rang. Okay, it's quiet. So those are just a few questions. Again, we were talking about romantic love. I mean, there were some pretty good descriptions in a developmental psychology book about paired bonding. They called it paired bonding, which doesn't imply orientation, but there were some pretty good descriptions of what happens in certain stages of paired bonding that doesn't happen in platonic relationships. Okay, there's the thing. Many people talk about the term love versus being in love, and there's two different states of emotions there. So, I think that it would bode us well that we would start elaborating on many of the concepts or many of the phrases that are associated with romantic love, especially in marriage. I mean, the big thing is sharing your life with somebody, your life mate. The person who you are married to is your life mate. Okay, now you want to talk. I just want to make one more last comment because this is an epistemological nightmare if you analyze it. Okay. Some people believe that your life mate is your best friend. Some people believe that your life mate cannot be your best friend. Now, both people come from successful romantic relationships. Okay, so it's not. So I'm not talking about. My issue is not with the practicality of these two views being within the relationship or guiding the relationship. My issue is with the epistemology. If you assert that your wife is not your best friend, then what is she? She's your friend. She's not your best friend, but your best friend knows you the most, right? If your best friend doesn't know you the most, if your best friend knows you the most, then you're sharing more of yourself with that best friend. So what does it mean by sharing yourself? And I'm not being sexually, that's just a mythology. In certain ways, that's more of a sacrament. So you can't share yourself sexually. That's more of a constructed sacrament. Okay. Well, will you see that airplane? Nah. Let's get back to work. Again. Yeah. What is sharing yourself? What is a lifetime commitment? Why do people quest for a lifetime commitment with a partner? Now, some people say you have a boyfriend. If you break up, or if you have a girlfriend, if you break up, you break up. I'm not saying everybody has that sentiment, but there is a strong sentiment that a lifetime partner is somebody that will die when you're old. Okay, there's this fear that you will become old and lonely, the consequences. I mean, I'm single, and I'm always reminded about the consequences of not having this life partner, that you'll be damned. It's almost in some ways a mini form of Christianity, that this life partner is the only thing that can save you from having the optimum meaning, because you can only have optimum meaning in a romantic relationship. So, these are some of the questions that you guys can analyze for yourself, and just write comments, whatever comments you want to write. All right, thanks.